Hi everyone. I actually finally figured out how to put this public instead of friends only, because the last few times I've been live, I've asked people to share the video and I'm like, why is it not being shared? And that's why, because I had it on friends only. So I wanted to come and go live and raise awareness. Obviously everyone knows I am a huge advocate when it comes to epilepsy, being that my 6-year-old daughter, Aria, has epilepsy and actually wasn't diagnosed until she was 3 years old. So, there's a quote that says, like, yes, maybe your child doesn't have epilepsy, but there was a time in my life where my child didn't either. And, or at least I didn't know that she did. So it's super important to me to get the word out there to raise as much awareness as I can when it comes to epilepsy and Glut1, because it could really happen to anyone. So I'm going to ask that anyone that's on here, if you wouldn't mind sharing, because the more people that see this video, the more lives we can touch together. And November is actually Epilepsy Awareness Month. So that's why I decided to kind of go live and share a little bit about Aria and her journey to her diagnosis with Glut1 Deficiency Syndrome. So when Aria was a baby, she started rolling her eyes a lot, and she started doing, she had issues with mild hypotonia, and there were like certain red flags. She couldn't exactly sit up straight like most babies could. When she walked, she was very wobbly. She was what they would call like not a very muscular baby. She was just very I forget exactly what her pediatrician called her, but she had mild hypotonia, which they had no clue why or what was causing it or anything. And they just kept telling me like, oh, she'll grow out of it. She'll grow out of it. And then her eyes started rolling and they were like, oh, they're just fine motor tics. She'll grow out of it. She'll grow out of it. Right. So we progressed to 3 years old and she starts falling. She starts having multiple different seizures a day. So an epilepsy fact for you, there are over 40 different types of seizures. And a lot of people, when they hear the word seizure, they think of a grand mal, which is basically someone falling on the ground or being completely unconscious, shaking for a period of time, which is absolutely beyond terrifying. If you've never seen someone have a grand mal seizure, anyone or anyone out there that who has a child that has grand mal seizures, give them a hug, please, because epilepsy is hard. It is the thief of joy. And, there is nothing worse than sitting there and watching your child seize. And I can't imagine, Aria, she has what's called absent epilepsy, which are basically little eye rolls that she does. She does have drop seizures that last anywhere from 3 to 10 seconds. She has myoclonic jerks. Her absent seizures are just basically like where she stares off into space. But my point of this is, a lot of times epilepsy flies under the radar because there are 40 different kinds of seizures. And it could be something as simple as you think someone's just not paying attention to you, but really they're actually having a seizure. And people are undiagnosed and children are undiagnosed. And that's the terrifying thing about epilepsy, and being a parent to a child with epilepsy, it's, there's really nothing like it. It's terrifying watching your child seize and not knowing not knowing you can't do anything to help them, basically, besides just be support. And, with Aria, I got her put on the ketogenic diet, and, I feel like keto goes hand in hand with epilepsy, and I'm going to explain why. So Aria trial and errored 7 different medications, none of which worked for her, all of which made her symptoms much worse. She started having what are called clusters of seizures. So I'm going to say to any parent out there who their child is currently on medication for epilepsy and they're feeling like their symptoms are getting worse, or they've trial and errored a bunch of different medications with no positive results over a certain amount of time, take this and run with it, because we tried 7 different meds, and do you know that not one of those medications gave her any sort of seizure freedom, and all they did was make her symptoms worse. And I'm going to explain to you why. So Aria, epilepsy for her is a symptom of Glut1 deficiency syndrome. Aria was born with Glut1 deficiency syndrome. She was not diagnosed until she was 3.5 years old, and she was diagnosed through lumbar puncture. This, honestly, the lumbar puncture is really the only solid way to diagnose for Glut1 deficiency syndrome. I'm going to say this right now because I'm not a medical professional. I'm not giving medical advice. I am simply just a concerned mom out there who is raising awareness for people because Glut1 is so rare in quotes, because no, it's not rare. The foundation actually believes there's upwards of 40,000 people undiagnosed with Glut1 deficiency syndrome, which is terrifying. And the majority of those people are part of the epilepsy community or hypotonia, which is another symptom of Glut1 deficiency syndrome. There are so many symptoms of Glut1, and the crazy thing is obviously epilepsy is one of the number one symptoms of Glut1. But people don't know that, and neurologists don't know that, and doctors don't know that Glut1 can range from mild to severe. And that's why I'm out here constantly going live raising awareness, because here's the thing. My kid tried 7 different medications for epilepsy, and all they did was make her worse. She was diagnosed with childhood absent epilepsy, and I did not feel comfortable with that because it didn't give me an answer as to why my kid was having hundreds of different seizures a day at one point. And on the EEG, she came in at 400 seizures in a 24-hour time span. And you're going to tell me that that's just, there's no reason for that. There's no cause, right? So I want to stress, if your child has epilepsy, looking into anything metabolic related, which is why I talk so much about the lumbar puncture, because that's how Aria was diagnosed. We did the genetic testing. We did everything. Everything came back normal. Her MRI came back normal. Her genetic testing came back normal. When they checked the genes that usually are mutated for epilepsy, came back normal. Even the gene, there's a couple different genes for Glut1 deficiency syndrome that are, a couple of them are unknown or they're being discovered right now. Chances are Aria probably has a mutation on one of those genes. It just has not been discovered yet. But she does not have a mutation on the SLC2A1 gene, which is the gene for Glut1 deficiency syndrome. 80%, I'm going to repeat that, 80% of cases of Glut1 have a mutation on the SLC2A1 gene, which means their glucose transporter doesn't properly transport glucose to their brain across their brain barrier, giving their brain energy. Whereas 20% of those people are like Aria and do not have a mutation on the SLC2A1 gene, but they present a phenotype that is the same as Glut1 deficiency syndrome, meaning Aria has what is called a mild phenotype Glut1 deficiency syndrome, which is why I'm constantly raising awareness for this, because it's gotten to the point where, you know, I go on to these epilepsy, these mom pages where, you know, everyone's sharing about their children. They're sharing videos, they're sharing stories, they're sharing all these different things. And then I go on the hypotonia page, same thing. Moms are like, my baby has hypotonia and epilepsy, right? So here's the thing. If your child has multiple symptoms of something, don't just assume it's one thing causing it, because the thing about Glut1 is there's like 15 to 20 different symptoms of Glut1 deficiency syndrome. And the even crazier thing is they can range from mild to severe. It can be like cognitive ability. It can be hypotonia, ataxia, tremors, seizures, let's see, head growth. I think I said mild hypotonia or worse. I mean, there's so many different symptoms when it comes to Glut1 that I think personally it should be a part of the newborn screening, because it is a metabolic issue. And if it presents itself at birth and you are able to treat it right away with the ketogenic diet, then who knows what that could mean for the Glut1 community? Who knows what that could mean for us moms that are suffering for answers because no one knows what's wrong with our kids, right? So that's why I encourage everyone to share this video, because there's tons of kids, and I can promise you, there are tons of kids out there right now that are undiagnosed with Glut1 Deficiency Syndrome based on the fact that all their genetic testing came back normal. Can you imagine, because I can't imagine this, can you imagine being a parent in a room, getting results and hearing, well, your child has epilepsy. Okay. Yeah, my child has epilepsy, but why? And when you ask that question as a parent, you say, why? Why is this happening to my child? Why does my child have epilepsy? And there's no answer for you. It is the most haunting, traumatizing moment of your entire life to sit there and know that no one has an answer for you. They're just going to say, oh, she's just having absent seizures and we don't know why. I'm not okay with that. So I encourage you moms and dads out there, and I'm going to, obviously, this will be shared in my epilepsy pages too, to, get yourself out there and realize that metabolic issues are real when it comes to epilepsy. And they're overlooked, and, these kids are just being thrown on medication that is not working for them. And to me, it's like, if you try 10 different medications and not one works, try the keto diet, because what do you have to lose, And I think that's where I kind of got to that point with Aria, where I started really researching, looking into Glut1, and I actually diagnosed my own child with Glut1 Deficiency Syndrome. I begged them to do a lumbar puncture. Most parents would say, that's terrifying. I don't want my kid having a lumbar puncture. My thought was, I don't want my kid seizing 400 times a day with no answers as to why it's happening. I don't want my kid living a life where I don't know what's wrong with her or what I can do to help her. And yes, the procedure, was it scary to know that my child had a spinal tap? Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's not as terrifying as knowing my kid could potentially live a life not knowing what's wrong with her. So I encourage any parents out there, obviously, like I said, it's Epilepsy Awareness Month, and that's why I'm live right now. We're closing out the end of the month, and I've been doing things to raise awareness and talking to as many people as I can, and I've actually helped quite a few people get their kids in for testing for Glut1 Deficiency Syndrome, and quite a few of those people's children, their glucose ranges fell into Glut1, and quite a few of those people are now on ketogenic diets because I reached out in those groups to talk to them as soon as they posted about their children, because something in my heart, something told me I needed to. And so that's why I won't stop. I won't stop sharing. I won't stop talking. I won't stop being an advocate for Glut1, for epilepsy, for anyone out there who has a child with, like I said, all these different symptoms, or of Glut1, or just has a child who's having all these issues and you have no clue what it is, or has a child who's tried so many meds and none of them have worked the way you want. Try the keto diet, get in with a dietitian, have your child tested for metabolic issues when it comes to epilepsy, because I can promise you, once you have your child tested, if you end up falling into that, your child ends up falling into that category of it being something to do with their CSF, glucose in their spine, once they get on the ketogenic diet, it's literally like a completely different kid. My kid went from being a zombie on tons of different medications, upping doses like every week, traumatizing her with different ones, withdrawing her off of medications, putting her on new ones constantly. She went from being this kid who could barely do anything without seizing 5 times every 15 minutes, 400 times a day, to being a kid who today got on her bike and rode without training wheels without any question. She went from having movement episodes in her legs, mild hypotonia, her muscles not growing properly, her body not functioning the way it should, her brain starving for energy, to being this kid who's energetic and full of life and on this diet that has been just beyond life-changing for her. So there again, if your child has any of these following symptoms that I'm going to list, or a multitude of them, make sure that you have them checked for a metabolic issue. Like I said, rare. Glut1 Deficiency Syndrome is rare, but the foundation believes that there are upwards of 40,000 people undiagnosed. Sorry for the barking dogs. They bark at a spoon falling on the ground. But anyways, so I'm going to list some symptoms, and then I'm going to hop off because this is getting lengthy, and I try to make this short, but I'm very passionate when it comes to this. So, all right, so we'll start. So epilepsy. So one is abnormal eye movements as a infant. So eye rolling, eyes going side to side, any sort of myoclonic eye movement, okay? Myoclonic seizures, absent seizures, grand mal seizures, really any type of seizure. Tremors is another big one, okay? Hypotonia is another big one. Speech delay, cognitive delay. Let's see what else. Ataxia, movement episodes. So anyone who their kid just sits and holds their legs and screams and yells and you don't know why, could be metabolic, right? Let's see. God, it's sometimes when I'm put on the spot to just list all the symptoms, I have a hard time. Trouble regulating body temperature, cold, hot, sweaty, just tired, fatigue, lethargic, seems like a zombie, even when you know they've eaten, has trouble speaking, so speech, cognitive, learning, any of that stuff, eating, swallowing, so has trouble eating, has trouble swallowing their food, maybe even isn't thriving to grow, has a small head circumference since birth that's under, oh God, I'm trying to think of the percent. I want to say under 6%, but don't quote me on that. Please look that up. But that's a symptom of Glut1 too, is abnormal head growth, having an abnormally small head, failure to thrive. All of these things, all of these symptoms can range from mild to severe. So just look into it. It does not hurt to look. Rule out Glut1. I urge all of you to rule out Glut1 the proper way, because 80% of people have a mutation on the SLC2A1 gene, but there's still that 20% that does not. So the only true way to rule out Glut1 is lumbar puncture, because it literally will tell you the CSF levels of the spine so you know how much glucose is crossing the brain barrier. I hope this made sense, and I hope everyone has an awesome night and a wonderful Thanksgiving, and everyone's staying safe and healthy. And please do me a favor, and if not for me, if not for Glut1, for Aria, please share this video so that we can raise awareness together and help get more kids diagnosed and help more parents sleep at night, because, well, not sleep, because us epilepsy mamas, we don't really sleep, but help the anxiety, help the parents who don't have an answer, who need an answer, who desperately need this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.